Good memories stick with you, and small details can easily stir them back up again. So if you remember this, you're one of the lucky ones. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, cars had style. They came in colors. Real colors like turquoise, bright red, and pink. And they came with tail fins that made them look like they could take flight. The tail fins era of automobile styling peaked between 1955 and 1961. Over that time, tail fins grew ever bigger and glitzier, as seen in the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado, which featured oversized space-age fins. But all trends must pass, and by the 1970s, the futuristic, jet-like fins had largely been phased out of car models. A&W drive-in restaurants were a special place in the 1950s and 1960s. The chain was found in most parts of the country, so the restaurant holds a fond place in many people's memories. Not only could you get carside service, but you could listen to your favorite music on the radio from the comfort of your own car. A&W was a go-to place for a date and a favorite place to stop after a night of cruising the Strip. Who remembers when A&W was the first to serve up a bacon cheeseburger in 1963? Recollection Road is proud to partner with LEGACYBOX. If you've considered preserving your family's memories, then watch until the end of this video to see how LEGACYBOX can help you do it. In 1974, with gas prices high and inflation running rampant, McDonald's introduced us to a new jingle that made us want to buy a Big Mac.
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun.
2 whole... Well, what was that word again?
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun.
Lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, lettuce, cheese, pickles, oh, what am I saying?
The catchy tune suggested you were getting a whole lot of food for a low price, and it also became a challenge that had everyone repeating it to see if they could do it without messing up. Growing up, it seemed every kid had a couple cap guns they would play with. Whether playing a game of cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers, having a cap gun with a fresh roll of paper caps loaded into it was the best. The sound, the puff of smoke, and the smell of fresh popped caps is one that is hard to forget. Plus, who didn't love using a rock to try to bust the caps against the sidewalk? After school, teenagers during the late 1960s would often rush home in order to catch the latest episode of Dark Shadows. The gothic soap opera gained popularity over its 5-year run, so much so they also made 2 TV movies, a record album, and an assortment of books and comics. The daytime soap had become a phenomenon, and teenagers couldn't get enough of it. After John Glenn drank Tang while he orbited Earth, kids across the country made it their drink of choice. Tang's selling point was that the powder was shelf-stable, and it was sold as a healthier and more convenient alternative to fresh orange juice. Its ties to the space program had it flying off the shelves, and families were waking up to Tang each morning. Although NASA didn't invent the drink, they did make it cool. What are the chances you remember when mail was delivered twice per day? Mail carriers used to walk 20 miles or more per day, and you would receive both morning and afternoon delivery. This practice ended in many places during the 1950s, but for some cities it continued through the 1970s. It's pretty amazing that a mail carrier used to lug around a 50-pound bag of mail in the morning and then have to do it all over again in the afternoon, just so we could get our mail. It also speaks to the volume of mail that was being moved back then. There was a time when you picked up the telephone and spoke to an operator before having your phone call connected. This was before automatic switchboards, which were phased in between the 1950s and the 1970s. Even after the transition to automatic dialing, it was still common to call the operator for many reasons, including directory assistance. Calling information or 411 was still pretty common through the 1990s. That is until the cell phones and the internet changed how we communicate. Remember when both teenage girls and boys wore bracelets back in the day? Girls had their sterling silver charm bracelets that represented everything about them, and they jangled every time they moved their arm. It was a status symbol, and having a ton of charms on your bracelet meant that you had an interesting life. boys chose to wear POW bracelets to show support for the soldiers in Vietnam during the 1970s. The bracelets were engraved with the name, rank, and date of capture of a prisoner of war or someone missing in action, and you couldn't stop wearing it until your soldier was released or accounted for. If you were of driving age during the 1970s, you certainly will remember the scarcity of gas during that time. Some gas stations ran out of gas, while others had long lines of cars waiting to fill up. The gas crisis, which started in 1973, caused prices to skyrocket and led to some stations posting flags outside, green if they had gas, red if they didn't, and yellow if they were rationing. Some stations limited how much each customer could buy, while others used odd-even rationing, which meant if the last digit of a car's license plate was odd, it could only fill up on odd-numbered days. The 1970s also introduced us to a new kind of hero in the form of the daredevil Evel Knievel. His bravado and miraculous resilience mesmerized kids, and so it's not surprising that makeshift ramps were constructed on sidewalks across the country during this time. Young boys, in an effort to be like Knievel, would show off by having friends lay down in front of the ramp so they could jump over them on their bike. It was a time when kids weren't afraid to get hurt, and they were always coming up with creative ways to fill the day. Did you ever play with any of these popular toys? Saturday Night Live was filled with funny sketches that made movie stars out of many of its cast members, but during the late 1970s, an unlikely character had us all tuning in. Mr. Bill was a Play-Doh figure that always found himself in a dangerous situation that would eventually lead to him being crushed or dismembered at the hands of Sluggo or Mr. Hands. The Mr. Bill Show lasted until 1981 on SNL, and the final scene has him being crushed by a California fault line that opens up. Did you grow up eating a lot of casseroles for dinner? Whether it was tuna or tater tots, this all-in-one meal was the go-to dinner for busy families decades ago. And it makes sense, because in each serving that was dished up, it was an entire meal packed with vegetables, cheese, carbs, and protein. Plus, it was pretty easy to make on a busy weeknight. A Letterman jacket or Letterman sweater was all the rage with teenage boys in the 1950s and 1960s. Traditionally, the jackets had an outer layer made of wool or leather and displayed the athlete's name, a varsity letter, and usually the school's mascot. The jacket was considered a status symbol, and they were worn mainly by the top athletes on the football or basketball teams. Letterman sweaters and jackets were also commonly worn by girls too, and it announced to others that their boyfriend was an athlete. Students still do occasionally wear Letterman jackets, but the popularity has worn off, and the sweater trend has all but disappeared. If you sported a varsity letter in the 1950s, you were the real deal. Like every decade, the 1960s had their fair share of popular hairstyles for girls. There was the beehive, worn by the Supremes, the short pixie cut, like Audrey Hepburn, the flipped bob style worn by First Lady Jackie Kennedy, and the bouffant style sported by bombshells everywhere. The 1960s saw hair trends change drastically as the decade wore on, and those high-maintenance hairdos were traded in for long and natural looks in the form of afros and hippie hair. How many of you had a Blacklight in your bedroom? Well, if you did, then you probably had some Blacklight posters hanging on the wall. Although Blacklight was mainly used for detection of counterfeit money and diagnosing leaks in refrigerators, it also found a more entertaining use. Teenagers couldn't get enough of the posters printed with special inks that, when exposed to ultraviolet light, caused them to glow. In the 1960s, between the widespread use of psychedelic drugs and the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, people really went crazy for the glowing posters. There was a period of time where kids and adults alike couldn't get enough of watching spy shows on TV. The James Bond film Dr. No kicked off the spy craze, and countless TV shows followed. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Get Smart, and Mission Impossible were just a few, and the growing Cold War tensions fueled the public's appetite for espionage. The TV was quickly teeming with globe-trotting government spies that were surrounded by beautiful girls, high-tech gadgets, and fast cars, which explains why the genre was so entertaining. This is a bizarre one, but in the 1970s, people were hooked onto something called Erhard Seminars Training, or EST. This was a therapy that involved having someone verbally abuse you in order to help you feel better. Theoretically, it seemed to work, and what started out as small sessions in living rooms became huge gatherings in hotel ballrooms, because it became such a popular form of therapy. There were books and seminars, and a cult-like following formed around it, but by 1984, the trend had all but fizzled out. Although the tomb of King Tut was discovered in 1922, there was a renewed interest in the late 1970s and early 1980s when an exhibit titled Treasures of Tutankhamun, which featured artifacts from his tomb like his iconic gold mask, toured the US. This created a cultural obsession with everything Egyptian. Between Steve Martin singing about it on SNL and the Bangles teaching us how to walk like an Egyptian, the King Tut exhibition became a multi-million-dollar industry that had everybody fascinated by it. Although smoking on a plane has long been outlawed, there was a time when smoking was completely acceptable. In the 1960s, many airlines allowed people to smoke, and non-smoking passengers just had to deal with it during their flight. Eventually, a smoking section was created, and there might have even been a curtain that could be drawn to separate the two areas. As time went on, short flights that were under 2 hours began to ban the practice, and then by the early 1990s, smoking on any flight was prohibited. Remember those tiny metal ashtrays in the armrest? They had that flip-up lid that you could fidget with if you weren't smoking. A popular fashion trend that made a bit of a comeback in the 1970s was wearing extra wide ties. Known as a Kipper tie, these things measured up to 6 inches wide, and they sported some bold colors and loud designs. Earth tones, paisley, and various animal prints decorated these polyester ties that were inspired by the ties of the 1940s, but the 1970s made them all their own. The ties were competing against huge floppy collars, so it makes sense that they too had some girth. The tie trend continued into the 1980s, but as time went on, the width shifted back to a more moderate size. If you lived during the 1980s, then you will certainly remember the family sitcoms that were on every major network. The big three were Family Ties, Growing Pains, and The Cosby Show, and everyone had their favorite. While the family sitcoms of the 1980s weren't a new concept, it was a break from the gritty sitcoms of the 1970s. The family formula worked well, and it helped to revitalize network television, while also making teen heartthrobs and huge crushes of some of their teen stars. Everything was big and bulky during the 1980s, including computers. Back then you had to load software using big floppy disks. They started out as literally black and floppy, and as technology evolved, they became a bit smaller and more rigid. The magnetic disk was how you loaded new software onto your computer. This was Microsoft's heyday, and it didn't matter that you needed 15 floppy disks to install Windows, because it was still cutting edge. Finally, if you were a teenage boy during the mid-80s, you probably had a huge crush on either Debbie Gibson or Tiffany. They were rival teen pop singers that rose to fame with big hair, ripped jeans, and a string of singles that dominated top 40 radio. Debbie wrote her own hit songs, while Tiffany sang cover songs that became massive hits too. Remember watching Star Search with Ed McMahon? Well, both tried out for the show, but only Tiffany competed, placing second. It doesn't matter which one you liked more, both of them became popular fixtures of the 1980s. Recollection Road loves to recommend LEGACYBOX because we both believe in preserving the past. If you have a cluttered closet with cherished home videos and photos that rarely see the light of day, then you need to visit LEGACYBOX.com/recollection. These irreplaceable heirlooms are rapidly fading away, and they deserve to be digitized and shared with family and friends. And right now, LEGACYBOX is offering you $9 tape transfers. The process is simple. Send in your LEGACYBOX filled with old VHS tapes, camcorder tapes, and pictures. Their team will professionally digitize everything by hand, right here in the USA. You'll get the originals returned to you, along with organized digital copies. I love LEGACYBOX because it makes all my favorite memories available anytime. I can post them on social media or pull up a slideshow on my TV, which keeps special family moments alive. Visit LEGACYBOX.com/recollection to shop their $9 tape sale. That's LEGACYBOX.com/recollection to unlock this incredible offer. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to check the description of this video for links to pick up a t-shirt and sign up for the newsletter. Thank you to our loyal Patreon supporters listed here. Visit patreon.com/recollectionroad to join the club.